Hello, welcome to the next Ocean Justice webinar from Ocean and Coastal Futures. Today we'll be exploring the intersection between disability, ocean access and ocean advocacy. Ocean and Coastal Futures is a convener of change in the ocean sector, and through its Ocean Justice series we want to create a space to discuss, debate and learn about aspects of EDI across the sector. This series is supported by the Esme Fairbairn Foundation, and we have an amazing panel who are very grateful for giving up their time today. We have Rebecca Daniels, who is the director of the Marine Diaries, a science communicator and marine biologist. We also have Rada, Pándeva, founder of the Thalassophile project. We have Bailey Smith, who is a disability advocate, and Jess Winder, founder of Ocean Ability Alliance. So just give you a bit of background today before we start. It's estimated that around 21% of the adult population, working population of the UK are disabled. This translates to more than 16 million people who could be facing significant barriers to participating in the marine and coastal sector, which in turn loses out on the diverse and valuable perspectives needed for achieving a resilient ocean. So our discussion today will cover what do we really mean by disabled, what does access to the ocean sector mean to different communities, and what are some of the common misconceptions around disability? What steps can individuals and organisations take to break down barriers for those with disabilities and drive change in the coastal sector? And we're going to have some brilliant opportunities for questions to our panellists here today. So I just want to give you a little bit of housekeeping before we start. If you can all make sure your cameras and sound is off. There's a chat function in this webinar, so please introduce yourselves if you want to, but also please look to the Q&A. So the Q&A is where you can post your questions. That's where I'll be kind of looking and concentrating on, so you can pose those questions to the panel, and I'll be keeping an eye out for that. You can make yourself anonymous on there as well and keep those questions constructive if you could. If you'd like that question to be posed to a particular panelist, please make that clear. If it's for everybody, that's fine as well. And please upvote it if you want to ask a question. Some versions of Teams perhaps don't have the Q&A, so if you just use the chat, and then one of the team will put that into the Q&A so I can ask the question. So now I'd like to ask our great panelists to turn on their cameras so that we can meet them all. Hello everybody, it's great to see you all. And what I'm going to do now is ask each of our panelists to give a short presentation, and then we'll get into the Q&A once we've heard from all four of them. So yes, so very first one is Rebecca, and please introduce yourselves when you begin your presentation. Over to you, Rebecca.
Thanks, David, and yeah, I just want to say thank you so much for one, spotlighting this issue, and also for the invitation to speak today. And thank you to Francesca for sharing my slides for me. Some technical difficulties on my end. So yeah, hello everyone. I'm Rebecca Daniel, and I run the Marine Diaries, which David, you did a fantastic intro, so I won't go into too much more depth, but our whole mission really is to connect people with the ocean, because we believe that everyone deserves the opportunity to connect with nature. It's a fundamental human right, and that obviously includes the disability community as well. And on top of that, a connection to nature has actually been shown to lead to more environmental action. And obviously, you know, there's growing evidence now that spending time in nature and by or in the ocean actually provides us with so many health benefits that are really important for our well-being, and can really actually support the disability community in that sense. Next slide, please. So 1 in 6 people have a disability, that is 17% of the global population, and most people don't expect to become disabled, but it's actually more common to acquire a disability over the course of our lifetimes than it is to be born with one. So around 8 out of 10 people with disabilities are not actually born with their disability. And obviously several factors can kind of lead to this, including illness, injury, and also just general aging. And, you know, disability also encompasses older people who have mobility impairments and things like that. So really what this means is that experiencing disability can really happen to anyone. So it's something that should be talked about a lot more, and we should be a lot more inclusive around disabilities across all sectors, but particularly in the ocean space. And I also just wanted to make it clear that I don't have a disability myself. Next slide, please, Francesca. But my mum does. So I kind of speak from my personal experience as a young carer from the age of 9, and now obviously as an adult who has really seen like a lot of the challenges that my mum faced and still faces as someone with a physical and mental disability that was acquired over the course of her life. Something that my mum says or has said in the past is that there is a medical definition of disability and a societal one. And I think the thing is, we tend to be completely unaware of the challenges people face, all different types of challenges, until we're actually exposed to them ourselves. So, you know, you probably haven't ever stopped to think about the small step you take into a building, the drop down from the curb when you're crossing the road, how soft sand shifts beneath your feet as you walk along a beach. I know that I didn't think about these things before my mum became disabled. We don't tend to notice these things because they don't represent barriers to us. Next slide, please, Francesca. The simple truth really is that the built environment, transport systems, and the products that we all use are primarily made for able-bodied people. And actually, if we made the world more accessible, people would no longer be disabled because they would be able to partake in activities and day-to-day life just like everyone else. And that's kind of what this, this quote, this sentence is all about. So next slide, please. There are several barriers to accessing the ocean for individuals with particularly physical disabilities is what I'm going to talk about today. There are physical barriers, there are social barriers, there are also systemic barriers. So often it's not possible to actually reach the beach, or you can reach the beach, but you can't actually get to the water's edge and get in the water. And if you think about the kind of standard boats, surfboards, planes, all of these things that we actually need to get to the ocean or enjoy the ocean, be on the ocean, are not really adapted for people with disabilities, particularly things like wheelchairs, electric wheelchairs. There are also, social barriers that exist. So there's a lot of a lack of awareness in the general public around disabilities, which can actually create a bit of an unwelcoming environment for individuals. And there's also a lack of proper training for staff. So, you know, if staff aren't trained, they don't know how to provide the right support or ask the right questions. And this can obviously lead to quite negative experiences for people with disabilities. For example, I often go scuba diving with my mum, and, typically we don't actually contact the dive operator beforehand because we've had negative experiences of me maybe emailing and saying my mum has a disability, she's actually very capable, she's been on lots of dive boats before, like, will you be able to accommodate? And I've actually had so many experiences, particularly also from like women's ocean scuba trips, where they've told us that they can't accommodate her, and that we should book our own private charter, which is obviously really expensive. So there's all of these different barriers just because of a lack of awareness and a lack of kind of preparation to be able to adapt for people with disabilities. And there's also systemic barriers. So often if you're an individual with a disability, you really need to know what the accessibility is where you're going, and typically there just isn't enough information out there to make those kinds of decisions, to decide where to stay, how to travel, which activity to book, for example. And there's just not enough kind of attention or funding on increasing accessibility. But next slide, please, Francesca. We do actually have solutions, and a lot of the solutions to increasing ocean access already exist. And often by listening to the disability community and particularly understanding individual needs, because disability is very individual, we can just make adjustments, provide equipment that allows everyone to really get involved in ocean activities. And a couple of examples of this, next slide, please, on the beach, you can have ramps, you can have boardwalks, you can have actual mats that are movable that can really support beach access. And once you get there, there are loads of different adaptive chairs, off-road motorized wheelchairs, these kind of ramps as well that actually directly take someone from their chair into a kind of like movable chair and down a ramp directly into the ocean, and it's completely unassisted. They can do that themselves. It's all motorized, and you know there's loads of these solutions that can actually ensure individuals can get to the beach and also get into the water. And there's, next slide please, there's also lots of ways to adapt most water sports, so from scuba diving to surfing, water skiing and kayaking. There's lots of different ways that actually all of these things can be adapted. There's just, I think, a lack of awareness that these solutions exist, and also a lack of funding to provide them. Next slide, please. So I think, given the topic of this webinar series, I think it's no secret that ocean science and ocean conservation in general lacks diversity. I think there's been kind of fantastic developments in the inclusion of women, ethnic diversities, and now like more and more so Indigenous voices and things like that. There's obviously a lot more to do on those topics, but I think that one group that hasn't really had any attention or very little attention in the ocean space is people with disabilities. So we launched a project which I'll just talk briefly about because I think I'm quite tight on time, but next slide please. We believe that the ocean can and should be for everyone. So we launched a project called Waves of Change that tackles the intersection between disability, ocean access and ocean advocacy. And what we're really trying to do is drive awareness of disabilities within the ocean space, but actually also really create change within the ocean tourism and conservation sectors. So we started this with, sorry, hopefully you can't hear that. Sorry, one second. Just realised this is playing. Okay, could you go to the next slide, please, Francesca, and play the video? Hopefully this works. Okay, seems to be without sound, but anyway, this is a short social media series that we launched as part of the first part of this campaign. And really what we wanted to do was introduce some of the challenges faced by people with disabilities when accessing the ocean, spotlight disabled ocean advocates like Liz. No, it's okay, Francesca, thank you though. This is actually my mum. We also highlighted Wheel the World, which is a fantastic disability travel platform, as an example of a positive solution. The response that we had was honestly incredible. And I think it just shows how little this is talked about in the ocean space. And on the next slide, we have some of the really lovely comments from both the ocean community and the disability community as well. And really what's next is bringing the disability and the ocean communities together, virtually, but also in real life. So we want to conduct online assessments, interviews, and really gather data and insights on perspectives, barriers, challenges, and then bring everyone together in initially a pilot workshop where we can really spotlight some of the individuals and organizations actually making strides in this area, but then really discuss tangible ways that we can make the ocean tourism and conservation sectors more accessible, and particularly have conversations with the disability community about how they feel that they could actually get involved in ocean conservation efforts. So really like a whole kind of co-creation process. And then we will also be producing a short film to show in those workshops as kind of an inspiration piece, but then we'll be distributing this more broadly to raise awareness of this topic. And we are currently fundraising for all of this. So yeah, hoping that this will be a big focus for us next year. And that's it from me. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Rebecca. That's really cool. That's really good. It's really good to hear about your campaign, the Waves Change, and yeah, going through those barriers, etc. So great, thank you for that. I'm just going to move on for now to our next speaker, who's Rada Pándeva. Welcome, Rada. If you'd like to introduce yourself and put your presentation up, and just to remind everybody, please put your questions into the Q&A if you can. Over to you, Rada. Yeah, that's
Rebecca,
great.
I loved your presentation. I've known about your work. I mean, we're friends, but I'll probably echo everything you said, of course, because accessibility and the lack of accessibility is something, whenever different organizations start to work on, it's really, we're stronger together, and it's just fantastic that we get the chance to talk about this together. So thank you so much for putting that conversation in discussion, for making it possible, really. But anyway, without further ado, hello, my name is Rada Pándeva, and also this is my sign name, Rada, which usually a deaf person gives to you. And I just introduced myself in British Sign Language in particular. I'm the founder of Thalassophile project, as David said, and we work to make marine science and ocean literacy accessible to all, together with a bunch of cool and awesome people that I will mention in a minute. But before we begin, I wanted to play you a quick video. Also, I hope you can hear me because I live very close to an airport, which is very loud. Now, let's see if that works. My slide hasn't changed. I wonder if it has changed for you.
Not yet.
Not yet, that's okay. We'll do this instead. And let's see. Is it playing for you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you hear anything?
No.
Okay, there's a lot of technical difficulties today, I guess. But anyway, just enjoy this beautiful view, I guess, and I will tell you what this is all about. Okay, let's see if the slide changes. I guess I'll have to do it one by one unless I do this. This video that I just played to you is actually without sound on purpose. I do this exercise playing this, almost 30-second long video without sound, which usually makes people feel bad about me, as somebody who is presenting and there's technical difficulties, or makes them a little bit uncomfortable because we are so used to, whenever we see a video, to be able to hear it as well. But this really is the reality for many deaf people who are trying to access any sort of blue education and ocean conservation resources or materials. And this is really just a little exercise and experiment to try to put ourselves in the shoes of a deaf person. I myself am also not disabled. I don't have a disability. However, this project is very much a personal one. And it's very much what I feel like will be my life's work, and I'm very grateful that I'll be able to share that with you today. This video is a snippet of 5 videos that we created as part of the Thalassophile project, which are in collaboration with a lot of marine researchers from around the world, and I will show you the full version in a minute. But I hope that exercise made you really think and try and feel for people with disabilities trying to access ocean material. Now, the Thalassophile project really is here to lay the groundwork and to make people aware of how important ocean access is. And we really believe that the ocean doesn't discriminate. It is usually people that discriminate, but that is often because of lack of awareness, like Rebecca talked about. And I love this quote by a climate activist from Kenya called Elizabeth Wadhuti. She says, "If we're going to achieve everything, we will need everyone on board." And I think with the ocean being our greatest ally in tackling climate change, we cannot afford to be in an exclusive space which limits the kind of perspectives we get, the kind of ideas we would, which could actually be, the game changer. Because people with disabilities have incredible and such different perspectives. Everybody has such a different perspective, really. We are quite unique individuals, and something I like to call it a superpower. Everybody has a superpower. and the ocean needs all of our superpowers to thrive, but also to continue helping us, like I said, as our biggest ally in tackling climate change. And really, Thalassophile, I should probably tell you what it means because it's a long word. David, you pronounced it perfectly. Usually people struggle to pronounce it, but it's a word that comes from Greek, and it means a lover and friend of the seas and ocean. And I have been a thalassophile for literally as long as I can remember, and I imagine a lot of you here listening now are thalassophiles as well. And the title of my presentation is Universally Accessible. Like Rebecca said, disability is very individual. People need very much different adaptations. It's not one size fits all. But what is universal is love. Love is the most universal and also the most transformative emotion that there is. And it's usually what drives people to join the conservation space in the field. And love is accessible. And everybody who feels any sort of care and feel like they want to contribute to this space, because like I said, we need everybody. We cannot be discriminatory against that. We do need everybody on board, and hence the name Thalassophile. I thought love is the driving force, and everybody should be able to express that love in whatever shape or form that takes. And really what usually is the barrier here is how to express that love. And Thalassophile, what we try to create, like I said, to lay the groundwork, is to raise awareness for one, but also to equip and to show different ways that barrier could be removed so people could express their love more freely. Now, we created 4 things specifically as part of this pilot project. The very first one is called the Common Accessibility Framework. Then we created our 5 educational pilot episodes, then some fact sheets for educators. And we also gathered a very cool resource hub which spotlights other examples of accessible ocean science materials or ocean conservation organizations and so on. So everything that Rebecca and Jess and Bailey do will be, some of it is already spotlighted there, but will make its way on our online resource hub as well. Let me show you what that looks like. So the Common Accessibility Framework is this 18-page digital document, which is available in 3 languages, in English, Italian, and German. This is because Thalassophile was created with the support of my wonderful colleagues from the Marine Institute for the Deaf and an Interchange nonprofit, which is an amazing German NGO. The Common Accessibility Framework, there is the link in the bottom of the pictures, and then in the top right you can find a QR code which will take you directly to our website where you can explore that document. What it is really is a guideline. It really tells you the most basic of steps you can take to make your resources more accessible, or to share with somebody who is creating ocean resources. It tells you things like what font to use so that it is accessible to a dyslexic person or to a visually impaired person. It tells you things like there's some links to websites where you can check the color contrast and whether it is good enough, again, for a visually impaired person. There is some tips, again, on how to create sign language videos. And it really is there as a first step to make people aware. And in my experience with Thalassophile, which we have been building for the past 3-4 years, is that people are so open to accessibility, and they really believe that this is key and it is important, just like Rebecca spotlighted and highlighted in the comments and the messages from people, but they don't know how to do it. And that is understandable. Ocean science is one, if not the most inaccessible ocean spaces. And we are here to really help start the conversation and provide very, hopefully, easy to follow steps which don't make people feel overwhelmed and therefore give up because it is difficult to implement. It isn't difficult to implement. There is very easy steps to follow, and the Common Accessibility Framework is there to sort of as a first step to this process. Then our original educational episodes, which were, like I said, created in collaboration with 5 researchers. They essentially sent us 5-minute videos of them talking about their research, and we forward those to our partners at the Turin Institute for the Deaf, who translated them into international sign. Now, you probably noticed that I didn't say international sign language. I will talk about this in just a moment, but let me show you the same video from the beginning, just in its full, glory, if you will. So much better, I hope. We have the captions, and of course we have the sound, and this makes it slightly more accessible. But to make it even more accessible is to create some videos in international sign. So what you will see now is one of our interpreters. Her name is Laura Caporali, and she is interpreting in international sign. There isn't a universal sign language. There isn't an international sign language. This is purely because the cultures differ, and just like spoken languages are diverse and diverse and different, and so are the sign languages. So even American Sign Language is different to British Sign Language. In Spain, for example, has the Spanish Sign Language, the Castellano, but it also has the Catalan Sign Language as well. Colombian Sign Language is also different than the sign language in Spain. It is absolutely fascinating to me, as somebody from Bulgaria whose English is not my first language as well. And it's all dependent on the culture, on the grammar. It's fascinating. I can talk about this all day if I could. But international sign is not a full language in itself. It is usually used during global events like conferences of the World Federation for the Deaf, for example. But it is primarily used in European and in Western context. So you can already imagine that this video might not be accessible to people in the global South, which is why a project like this, or any sort of project that works with people, with deaf people specifically, would have to be very much a global effort. We can't do this alone, and we should not have to do this alone. We're all in this together. And yes, and the ocean has to be accessible for us to be able to work together towards this common goal. Anyway, I'm gonna continue because I probably am also running out of time. Here are 3 examples of our digital resource hub that I mentioned in the beginning, where you can find other examples of fantastic work, genuinely fantastic work, aiming to bridge the gap between the ocean and people with disabilities. You can find all sorts of different materials in there, both for deaf people, for visually impaired people, different things about 3D models. I will let you explore that in your own time, but yes, if you also have ideas and you know of other work that should make its way on our resource hub, please get in touch. I love to read and learn about what people are doing in this space as well. And finally, we created also 5 fact sheets specifically for for educators. I didn't mention in the beginning, but the Thalassophile project is specifically tailored towards adult learners, because often adults are excluded as well, and those are the people with the voting powers and also with the money. So we're not actually working with children, so to speak, but we are specifically working with people outside of the formal education. Those five fact sheets are based on the same topics as the 5 episodes. So the research of the 5 scientists that we interviewed, and they comprise of 1 page titled what educators should know if they're not particularly aware of this marine science topic, and the second page is what they can do, what educators can do. And we also provided links to other accessible materials that they can use to teach this topic, if that makes sense. Hopefully it makes sense. You can read about all this, basically what I'm talking to you about now. We wrote about in this book called Emotional and Ecological Literacy for a More Sustainable Society, which the whole book I recommend. It is all about, the power of emotion and care specifically in driving transformative conservation efforts. And we had the honor of contributing our work to it as well. There is, again, another QR code in the top right. And I leave you with this quote to finish, which is one of my all-time favorite quotes by Dr. Asha DeVos, an incredible marine biologist and ocean educator. She says, the ocean is diverse and its champions should be too. And what do we have? A big thank you for listening, and I look forward to your questions and to future collaborations as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Rada. That was great, and yeah, you certainly threw me with the experiment of the video at the beginning there. So it's great. Yeah. Thank you. So we'll now ask our next panelist to come onto the screen. This is Bailey Smith. Over to you, Bailey.
Hi, everyone. No slides from me today. I'm just going to talk to you, and I want to kind of just share a bit about my journey and my career as well. So Bailey Smith, as a visual descriptor, I am white, femme presenting with brown hair and my big green glasses on. And it's really great to hear all of the projects that the other panelists have talked about and how we can provide access to nature for disabled people, which is something I am hugely passionate about. I say as my day job, I work as a sustainability manager in construction. And I also work as a disability and neurodivergence advocate, consultant, educator, and I think that list is forever growing. But in that, I particularly work with businesses to improve the employment practices, and also work with a lot of nature organisations to improve accessibility, whether that be through kind of that consultation or even providing accessibility videos. So that people know where they can access. And I think Rebecca touched on it, that a lot of the information you need just unfortunately is not readily available. And so it can be really challenging. And for context, I'm a disabled autistic wheelchair user. So for me, physical access as a wheelchair user is so important. And yeah, we need to have that information so that we know where we can access, and especially in kind of, the natural environment, it isn't probably somewhere we all think of kind of wheelchair users going around. But hopefully I'm kind of going to share my journey and how we can make nature and outside spaces more accessible. So I'll kind of start off with, as I said, I work in the construction industry as a sustainability manager. So that looks at both environmental and social sustainability. And my journey kind of into my very early career has been, riddled with multiple barriers. I'm really fortunate that I grew up in kind of a rural area. My granddad lived in Pembrokeshire, so I have really good, fond coastal memories there. And I studied environmental sciences at UEA for 4 years and loved all of my oceanography and biogeochemistry models. But unfortunately, my health declined, and with 8 months to go of my master's degree, I became a wheelchair user. And I share this a lot, but I can vividly recall going to my careers advisor as a new wheelchair user, kind of given the very basic NHS wheelchair. I couldn't even get around university campus, let alone kind of access nature, which is just so ingrained into me. So I went to my careers advisor and kind of asked, okay, how can we make this work? How can I have this environmental career that I'm still so passionate about as a wheelchair user? And we searched for that representation. We contacted large environmental companies, organisations, to try and find someone that we could pinch that roadmap from, kind of to make it a bit easier. But unfortunately, at the time, we couldn't find anyone. We couldn't find that representation. And I think that was such a pivotal moment, because I could have kind of said, okay, this is going to be far too difficult. Nobody else is doing it, so it's not possible. Or what I am trying to and have done is go, okay, we need to make this change. And for me, there are kind of 4 main kind of barriers that I think a lot of disabled people experience. And although, these barriers are not unique at all, but I think it is unfortunately still in this kind of day and age unique for wheelchair users to be environmental professionals or working in conservation and that sector. So we touched on the first kind of barrier there, which is around that representation. There's kind of that saying about you have to see it to be it. And I don't think that's true. However, I think if I saw that representation, my career journey would have been a lot easier. And I probably would have had more confidence going into that space and feeling like I did belong. Then the second barrier that I talk about a lot is the physical access. As a wheelchair user, this is critical. And Rebecca kind of touched on it an awful lot as well. And when kind of thinking about this talk today, it reminded me of, I went on a field trip in my master's degree, and we were doing an environmental impact assessment going across the River Dart. And actually that was the first time I'd been on a boat as a wheelchair user, and it just felt like those opportunities had opened up kind of so much more. And another barrier, which I think is so critical and important to discuss when we talk about disabled people accessing nature, is the financial barriers. Now, as a 4th year student with a maxed out overdraft, I was then looking around for all-terrain wheelchairs and talking around kind of £14,000 plus, which I did not have. And being in a university setting, there wasn't much financial support available. And I actually had to fundraise this, which I'm forever grateful that we were able to do. But a lot of disabled people just do not have the finances available to access this specialist equipment. So it's really important that we do kind of get funding available so people can use the right equipment where possible. In the employment sector, yes, there is access to work, which is fantastic when it does work, but it is a flawed process, and unfortunately is under kind of further threats of cuts going along. And then the 4th barrier, which I think Rada also really kind of touched upon in terms of that universal like emotion and feeling, because attitudinal barriers have actually probably been the biggest barrier in my career. And that's because it's when people are stopping you before giving you the opportunity to try. I've had universities tell me I couldn't go on a field course. I've had people in construction saying disabled people don't belong on site. But actually, I've also had incredible people that have said, no, we can work this out. My course leader for that compulsory field course, I had the university kind of sit me down for risk assessment after risk assessment. But the lecturer kind of turned around and just said, well, we will take you on the field course, doesn't matter what wheelchair you have. Unfortunately had the fundraised kind of wheelchair, but it really is down to kind of people. People can really change disabled people's experiences. And I think that's something that is really important for us to all kind of remember. It just takes one person to speak up about accessibility, to kind of be that disruptor, to get other people thinking, oh, actually, yeah, this isn't accessible and we need to improve this. And that kind of goes throughout, the environmental sector, also accessing the ocean and oceanography side, and workplaces as well. So just want to say thank you so much, and I really look forward to kind of any questions later on. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Bailey. That was really good. I really enjoyed that. And I think some of those barriers you mentioned, like the attitudinal barriers, we'll come back to that in the questions, I think. Okay, so we'll move on to our final panelist, Jess Winder. Over to you, Jess.
Thank you. it has been amazing listening to everyone so far. As someone who's quite new with Ocean Ability Alliance, quite young, only maybe 2 years old, it's been amazing listening to everyone today and hearing how everyone's been contributing to this really essential topic of conversation. So I would like to start with saying thank you for inviting me onto this panel, and I'm really grateful to be a part of this. And I guess to start, I'll introduce who I am and what I do. So my name is Jessica Winder, and I am a student currently doing my MSci in marine biology at the University of Southampton. And I also take part, I'm a volunteer with British Divers Marine Life Rescue and a volunteer with Hampshire and Isle of Wight Wildlife Trust. And of course, also the founder of Ocean Ability Alliance. Now, why did I start Ocean Ability Alliance? Well, in 2022, I was diagnosed with ME/CFS, which stands for myalgic encephalomyelitis, and also with some mental health battles that came along with that. And that diagnosis and the grief of that made my university experience quite difficult. And I had no clue how I'd keep up and what support even looked like with someone with an invisible illness, an invisible disability. And another part of it was there's a big side to marine biology at university of building up experience and job and hunting for internships and volunteering jobs, particularly over the summer months. And so when I started looking for those opportunities, I found that there was no information on how accessible ones that could be for me, or even basic info on field trips on how they would even look for someone with an illness. I kind of had to fight for that information and email after email to people, and it just wasn't obvious or accessible. So Ocean Ability Alliance was born out of a frustration, to be honest, and a personal vendetta against the harmful elements of hustle culture, because I believe that no one should have to burn out or sacrifice their health to belong in marine science at all. I was putting myself in that position, and I just decided it was enough. There was no point in sacrificing my health for that sake. So for the goals of Ocean Ability Alliance, I've kind of been able to separate them into three key goals. And the first one is I have a forum set up, which is a place for people with disabilities to share the barriers that they are facing anonymously, so that I can take those suggestions and experiences, for example, to the EDI committee at university, and to present them with that data, because I think it would be beneficial if because I think that the only worthwhile change can be made is with information and input put forward by people who need the changes, and to not waste time with coming up with them, and actually just listen to people and what they have to say about about what they need. Goal 2 is to advocate for accessibility planning and put that in the forefront of event planners' minds, just to make enough noise about it, so that in the process of organizing events, that they're already accessible and it's not an afterthought, because it becomes, I would say, it's a lot easier to implement accessible features at the beginning of an event planning than at the end, as a side thought, afterthought, just quickly just fix it. Or it'd just be a lot more beneficial if it was just already implemented from the get-go. And thirdly, I want to start sharing more stories about people with illness and disability in this space, and kind of elevate those voices and show how they are thriving as a marine biologist, to show younger generation and anyone who's aspiring or thinking of they might want to be a marine biologist, to show that people can navigate this space with a disability, and it can be done, because I hadn't seen a marine biologist personally with a chronic illness or anything, there's no example. So in order to work towards these goals, so far I have my Instagram page, which I really like, and it has a link tree on there to the forum, and also on the Instagram page I also have some posts so far only based on my experiences living with a disability in marine science spaces, with I've done a tips post about managing MECFS while doing a reef survey, and how I was able to pace myself, and just tips on how to have that conversation with if you're going out with a team, and how to have that conversation with people and say, I need this, this, and this, and how to have those a bit more, so people have more confidence on having those conversations, because it can be quite daunting. And one of the biggest things about having an invisible illness that I've personally found is just feeling like you're in the way and that you're just going to be a pain. And unfortunately, that is how I have felt quite a lot of the time, of just being a pain, unfortunately. But that's definitely not how people will perceive you, and it's to help people have the confidence to have those conversations, because I definitely had to build up that confidence to kind of advocate for myself. So if there's any tips that I can provide on anything for anyone, I will definitely want to be sharing more tips and tricks on how to have those conversations, because it is daunting, particularly when you're newly diagnosed in those situations. And then I also, for my university, I have a slide about the Instagram page that will go up in front of every first year lecture. So all new recruits will be able to have access to the forum and share things, and to be aware that there is someone at the university thinking about them. And because previously the EDI committee, it can be a bit of a struggle to find, and it's not quite obvious where you can reach them. So by having this slide in front of all the lectures, I think would be really beneficial. And that there's the QR code, very obvious, and so people can find that and can provide feedback about their modules, or any questions on any of the compulsory field courses that they have. They have 2 in first year at my university, so any questions about those. I have also, with internships that I have completed, fortunately with Marine Discoveries in Cairns, they were really keen to listen to kind of what advice I had for them. So I created like a slide and like a bit of an information pamphlet of things that I personally noticed that could be improved. But again, all of this is at the minute only really coming from my experience, and I need everyone. I want everyone's opinions and everyone's stories and everyone's what they think would be beneficial, because as Rada and everyone, all the panelists have said, that it's very individual. Disability is very individual to a person, so just my experience isn't enough. We need everyone's. But yeah, so far I have been able to provide some insight to internship companies on how they can improve their program, and they took it on very well, and they have adopted I'm pretty sure all of them. So that was really great to see. And so that is everything I think I have time for today. So please feel free to ask any questions, and thank you so much for listening. And once again, thank you for having me on this webinar. This is great. So thank you.
Thank you, Jess. That was great. Really good. And thanks to all the panelists. So if the other panelists could turn on their cameras as well, please, and then we'll have a discussion between the 5 of us. That'd be great. And for the audience, please do keep putting your questions into the Q&A. You can see them coming in now, and we'll get to as many as we can before we finish in the next 25 minutes or so. So I just want to I mean, the presentations are fantastic, and all your personal journeys and personal stories are fantastic. I just wanted to ask a starting question, really. So, you know, disability, you'll know this better than me, but disability is a very broad term, and people are very often kind of scared to broach it, or broach the terminology, or say the wrong thing. I guess, what advice would you give to people on navigating, I guess, the language in this area? And I'll start with perhaps you, Rebecca.
Yeah, so I think it's difficult. I think a lot of the time people focus on asking people what their disability is, which from my mum's experience, she absolutely hates, because it's quite an invasion of privacy. Sometimes it can be like a traumatic experience that has caused a disability, right? And there's a lot of emotions caught up in maybe, you know, your personal experience as a disabled person. So I think it's not directly answering your question, but I think the key thing to point out is that it's about being open and about inviting the person to tell you about their experience, rather than, you know, asking people what's wrong with them, or you know, oh, why don't your legs work, and things like. All of these comments are like so common, it's very yeah, it's not nice. So that would be what I would say to this. Yeah.
Great, thank you. I'll come to you, Jess.
Yeah, following on with what Rebecca said, I think it is very essential to be kind of mindful about when speaking to someone with a disability, particularly also coming from someone with an invisible one and having to advocate, and you kind of feel like you have to prove that you're disabled to someone, which is really jarring and not fun, and it takes a lot of energy and is not nice. So I definitely being more open and kind of understanding that not all disabilities are visible as well is also essential.
Thanks, Jess. Rada, do you have anything on this point?
Yeah, I would say really the goal is to not have to ask the people. The goal is to really be already accessible in what you do, that people feel already invited and welcome and like they belong already. I mean, in language is the very first barrier that needs to be surpassed. You know, and the language is how you speak and how you view people, and yes, it's one of those things that ideally, with what we have talked about here, is to make people start thinking about what maybe what small changes they can make before, you know, rather them taking the initiative, rather than waiting for a person with a disability to come to them and say, this is, you know, what I need, to initiate the conversation rather. I think that's what I would say. I think that would be the way.
Thank you. And I'll come to you, Bailey, as well, just to finish this question.
Yeah, I think all I would add is that it's okay to get it wrong. If you can say, there's a lot of power in saying, I'm really sorry, like the intent was not malice, there was no intent to harm. Thank you for correcting me. And I think it's that willingness to be corrected that has the biggest kind of opportunity for change here. Because as they've touched on, people will say the wrong things. They will say things that are jarring and harmful. But if you can kind of just say, oh, sorry, I don't actually talk about my medical diagnosis with people I don't know, or if you can just say, oh, actually, we don't really use the term differently abled, because actually that's a euphemism avoiding using the word disabled. And we need to feed into the rhetoric that disability isn't a bad word. So language definitely has power, but I do think it's about, when you're going into those conversations, you probably will get it wrong. And that's okay if you can apologise and use the correct terminology going forward.
Thanks. That's great, Bailey. And I think it's really interesting, isn't it? Because I think there is a lot of fear amongst people to say the wrong thing and trip themselves up, basically, isn't it? Rebecca.
Yeah, I would just add that I think you can ask, right? So you can say, ask if anyone has any accessibility needs or individual needs. And then, you know, if you see or meet someone that, you know, you think might have a disability that they haven't declared it themselves, and you think they might need some support, you know, you can say, sometimes they're obvious, right? So you can say, you know, how would you like me to, you know, describe your disability, or do you have any needs that we need to be aware of? And then you can kind of like put the onus on the person to tell you what they would like to share and how they would like to be presented, or whether they don't want anyone to, you know, talk about it at all. So I think it's about giving the power back to the individual.
Yeah, it's really good. Thank you for that. Just to move on, it's really interesting that, I mean, everything was really interesting, but I think something that Bailey and Rebecca said seemed to kind of mirror each other. I think Bailey, you talked about attitudinal barriers, and I think Rebecca, you talked about those physical barriers, the systemic barriers, but also the social barriers, which I guess I interpret to mean the same thing as what Bailey was saying, the attitudinal barriers. So it's really interesting that, isn't it? That, you know, you've got physical barriers like, you know, sand on a beach, and you've got the systemic ones, which are big society ones. But you both highlight these attitudinal ones around society. And how do you think it's possible to break that one down? Because it's, well, how do you think we do that? I'll start with you, Bailey.
Yeah, I think as a new wheelchair user, I really thought physical barriers would be the hardest thing for my career, for me kind of accessing society. But as I reflected upon it, really has been the attitudinal ones. And I think there's kind of different ways that this can be approached. I think upskilling in education is really important. You know, we've all grown up in a rhetoric where, you know, historically disabled people have been hidden away from society. You know, you've had parents saying, oh, don't stare, you know, at that person in the wheelchair. It's very much been brought up to be a taboo topic. And there hasn't been a lot of authentic representation. So I think we need to have that authentic representation, have people sharing their stories, and equally on the other side, have people going, oh, okay, yeah, this isn't scary. It might be new to them, but, you know, if you want a problem solver, disabled people are your problem solvers. You know, we navigate a world that is not designed for us. So I think it's just having that open attitude to go, oh, okay, like I didn't know that, or again, like, oh, I didn't realize it wasn't appropriate to us, X, Y, Z. I think it's just we need to kind of go, okay, we've all been brought up in this world where, you know, disability has had this damaging rhetoric put onto it, but we need to go, okay, this isn't fact. How can we move forward and make sure that we are disability inclusive as well as accessible?
Great, thanks. Rebecca, do you want to come in on that kind of, I guess, social
Yeah,
barrier you explored it?
Yeah, I think I mean, excellent points, Bailey, and I'd agree with all of those. I think from kind of my mum's perspective, I think a lot of the time we need to kind of shift our whole approach to engaging with people with disabilities, to actually seeing them as individuals, as persons, and not people, sorry, and not defined by their disability. You know, my mum has so many other amazing aspects of her personality, what she does, her work, like the things she's passionate about. And I think often the first thing we see as human beings is like, oh, that person is in a wheelchair. And then that is the thing that we think about, instead of being like, hi, how are you? What are you interested in? What do you do for work? It's like the first thing that everyone's mind goes to is, you know, what's wrong with you? And I think it's shifting that whole mindset of approaching, you know, just we're all human beings, and we should all be treated as such.
Yeah, spot on. Thank you, Rebecca and Bailey, for that. And Jim, come to a couple of the questions that are in the Q&A. This one's for you, Jess. I mean, I think Rebecca just mentioned her mother and the very visible disability, but obviously for yourself, you mentioned about the invisibleness. So the question here in the Q&A says, I also have ME CFS, so nice to hear from someone with the same disability as myself. What do you think is the best way for organisations to engage meaningfully with disabled people?
Well, it's lovely to speak with someone who also has ME. I also haven't actually met anyone else with ME either, so that's really fun. How do best way for organizations? Well, I really liked Rada's answer a minute ago about how ideally it would already be a welcoming place for people to come in and have that be able to have that dialect with organizations, with employers or at your university, for example. How they could implement that, I think, is just it's being open to having those conversations, and for it to be kind of I want to say like a safe space to have that kind of conversation, and it not be kind of hidden behind like deep on a website page at the bottom of like who to contact, and just have it as like something that's already kind of integrated into the, whether that be like an employment form, or with the internships that I was doing, have that kind of already like information for people with access needs on what they are currently what they already have in place, and that they're open to have anything be recommended to them if for an individual who needs it or has like something more specific that they require. So I guess in general it's just being open and clear, that making it very clear that they are open to have that conversation with you, and that it's not a bad thing, that they want to hear what they want to hear it, because that was what was really nice from Marine Discoveries when I worked with them, is that they were very they just wanted to hear from me, and was so accommodating, and they just wanted to learn. And I think if more organizations adopted that kind of ethos, it would be really beneficial for people.
Right. Okay, great, thank you. I will come back to some of the, and I'll ask another question in a second around where progress is happening in organizations and outside it. But I want to come to another question in the Q&A for you, Rada, around international sign. So the question here is, are you able to share any thoughts or research behind how accepted international sign is by the deaf or non-hearing community? So that's really specifically around, I guess, international sign itself.
Yeah. Yes, the answer would be no, just to be very blunt. But something curious I would like to touch on is that, interestingly, when you write deaf, you would write it with the lowercase d, then write a slash, and then write a capital D. So the people who would identify as deaf with a capital D are people who were born, in the deaf community as so sign language is their first language. And people with the lowercase d are people who still very much rely on the spoken structure of a language. So they would not necessarily say that they belong to the deaf community, or don't identify necessarily as that. And international sign, I was reading through the Q&A, and I actually Googled as well, because I don't know. But like I said, it is mainly and primarily used in more international events, and it was created from the common points in the different sign languages, which again, like I said, it will be quite difficult to create an international sign across all of the different variations and dialects across the many languages spoken in the world, which is why it's a little bit more, I guess, used usually during UN events, even though I did attend a UN event and there was zero sign language interpretation in any sign language that there would be, which was quite disappointing. So I don't think I'm answering your question, but if I would recommend, if you Google, international sign and really its origins, its linguistic origins, just to see where the common points are. What is curious is that a British Sign Language, the structure, what I did in the beginning is I did the sign's name, me, what, and then I spelled my name. This is the structure of the sentence. It is not my name is, and it's the same with different sign languages, but with international sign, I believe they do follow more the spoken structure. But again, this is something I do need to educate myself a little bit more on, and hopefully even study it in the future. I find it, like I said, quite fascinating.
Thanks,
But
Rada. Yeah,
there should be some information online, I hope.
yeah, sure. Thank you. Yeah, it's great. And I certainly need to educate myself on lots of what you've said today, all of you. So thank you. Another question really, and it kind of links to what someone has just put in the Q&A around organizations, large or small. So I guess it's quite a broad question. Where do you think most progress or success is happening? Is it in, let's say, specific disabilities, like, or wheelchair users or deaf community, or is it perhaps in certain organizations like universities or workplaces or government? Where do you think progress is being made? Where's the positivity? And I'll come to each of you. I'll start with you, Bailey.
Yep, no worries. I think it can really differ across, as you said, whether it's kind of different organizations or the workplace or wherever, but there are definitely kind of pockets of really brilliant work going on, which the speakers here have kind of highlighted. I think in the workplace, for instance, working in the construction industry, there's very much a acknowledgement that we need to be more inclusive. I think where they're struggling is that, okay, how do we do this? And that's where kind of working with different companies has been really helpful. And I would say there has been a massive increase in so like nature charities, so the National Trust, or I recently went to the WWT Wetland Centre doing some work for them. Also my local, I'm in Milton Keynes, and they have the Parks Trust, which again is a charity organisation, but they've recently installed more accessible gates and they maintain their paths. So I do think more kind of places where you can access nature are improving. There are places where you can hire kind of mobility scooters or even electric all-terrain wheelchairs, so that then people can have that gateway to kind of get into nature, because as hopefully I highlighted in the talk, it's not easy with all the different kind of barriers and financial ones there. So I think it's just trying to find the pockets and bring people together, because if as a collective voice, rather than going the deaf community are working on this, wheelchair users are working on this, if we can all group together to just say what we want here is accessibility in its various forms, I think that's when we'll make the real change. But I think at the moment it seems to be quite siloed. So it's just trying to kind of, have these conversations, link more people together to push forward the real change we need to see.
Thanks, Bailey. It's great. Rebecca?
I would say I probably don't have much knowledge on this, but I think from, I guess, my perspective or what I'm aware of, similar to what Bailey was saying, it's actually, there's been lots of developments that I obviously showed some of the solutions to accessing the beach and adaptive scuba and all of these kinds of things. I think probably what is missing is, that connection piece, that information accessibility piece for the disability community, and also making accessibility information as standard for everything, because that's where we want to get to, right? Like every event, every venue, every tour operator, every scuba diving operator, they should have somewhere where it explains what their accessibility kind of policy is, or their information, or actually states that we aren't accessible yet, or we're working on it, or like, here's what we're doing, we can accommodate you, please get in touch, that kind of thing. So yeah, I think it is really that broader scale piece that is missing.
Thanks, Rebecca. Jess or Rada, do you want to add anything to this question?
I think Bailey and Rebecca had fantastic answers, so I think I will sit this one out.
Okay, great. I'll just we're drawing to a close in a second, so I just want to cover two more things. I'll just kind of prepare you for the final question, which is going to be, what one thing would you like everyone to take away from this session into their work? So I'll let you think about that. But before I do that, there's another question just coming to the Q&A, really, around what's your opinions on organising ocean activities specifically for people who identify as having a disability? And this question then leads on to talking about, is there a possibility that those events are interpreted as exclusionary, and perhaps what people actually want is that that the event is
more general. In other words, it's a more general public event rather than specific to their disability. I don't know if anybody would like to answer that one, or if they have a view on that one. Bailey?
Happy to jump in. I think there's, the ideal world would be that the event is accessible to everybody. That is the ideal. I just don't think we're quite there yet. And I know Rebecca spoke about actually training kind of more specialisms that are needed for disabled people so that they can partake in the event, or, whatever it is. And equally, for a lot of disabled people, even me in a wheelchair rocking up to a construction site, that's still super daunting because they don't expect that. And then again, you have those attitudes of kind of like, oh, what are they doing? Why are they on a construction site? What is happening? So actually, to be able to build the confidence also of disabled people in these areas, if it's, tourism and leisure and things that they haven't done before, I think actually there is also a real nicety of having kind of that safe space for people to try things and also to connect with other disabled people too. But 100%, the end goal is anybody can rock up to whatever it is, or, go help research. Yeah, the ideal goal is it's fully embedded, but I think we need to kind of get there in little steps.
Thanks, Bailey. That's great. Yes, Rada?
Very quickly. Like we said, there isn't a one size fits all, but often you would find that a lot of disabilities do overlap. So some accessibility adaptations would make it more accessible to multiple groups of people. However, similar adaptations would make it inaccessible and exclusive to other people with different disabilities. So what I would love to do in the future with Thalassophile is create a multisensory exhibition. So sort of bring together art and science and, use all of the senses that we can, which hopefully would make it accessible, not just for people with disabilities, but for everybody, which is, like Bailey said, that is the goal. The ocean is for all. And we want them to be together in that space and to see how they could create that team of ocean protectors and advocates, and highlight, how that could work.
That sounds great. I look forward to my invite. Thank you very much for that. So I'm just going to draw us all to a close, really, and coming back to that final question around what one thing would you like everyone to take away from the session into their work? And I'll start with you, Jess.
I guess one thing that I also have to tell myself again and again and again with having a disability is that you should not have to burn out and make yourself even more ill to be in this space, and always look after your health first. That is probably my one thing. And that there are people out there that want you to do that and look after yourself, and you shouldn't have to push yourself too hard.
Great. Good advice. Thank you. Rebecca?
I would say, obviously it depends what, work you're in, but I would say just be open and welcoming to the disability community, and, just try. Like, if you ask the right questions, you ask what's needed, you might not have the right equipment, but you can give it a go. And you just have to have like an open and honest conversation with each individual, right? About what you can provide, whether they're happy with that, and what more you can do, and also just learn from each person you come across about their needs and what they would like to see.
Great, thank you. Rada?
I would say reach out. I personally love to talk about this and love to learn together with other people and explore different ways we could be better. And really, you can make a world of a difference for somebody. It could be one person, but that's really empowering. Even one person is really the goal here. And one by one, little by little, drop by drop, we make an ocean. So reach out, and like Rebecca said, be open. Yes, together we can make it a more accessible space. But yeah, the conversation needs to keep going. There is still a lot of work to do, which is why we need all of you. And thank you for attending and being open to listen and learn.
Great, thank you. And finally, Bailey?
I would say that, the power is in the people. We have the opportunity to create the change. So don't be the blocker. Don't kind of project your misconceptions, which we've been brought up, they're okay to have, but we need to challenge them, and we need to be the disruptors rather than just going, oh, okay, well, there's no physical access because there's never been physical access, that's okay. Be the disruptor and go, hold up a sec, we're excluding a whole group of people here. How can we change this? So I think it's, when the scale of, trying to make, access to the ocean, whatever it is, accessible, it can feel humongous. But I think, remember, you have power in you as a person, and as a group of people, we can collectively make change.
Thank you. It's a great way to finish. Thank you, Bailey, on that kind of positive note. So I just want to wrap it up and just thank all our wonderful speakers, our wonderful panelists for presenting and talking to us today. Jess Winder, Rebecca Daniel, Rada Pándeva, and Bailey Smith. It's been great. Thanks for everybody for watching, and thanks for all your questions. And please join us for our next in our Ocean Justice series. And goodbye for now.